I'm Carrie from Simple Bird Studio. The reason we're here today is I want to show you how to do one of these dicey shapes. It's a fern. It's part of Sue Garman's Friends of Baltimore quilt. There are these ferns in one of the blocks. There are 5 ferns. In the border, there are 2 of them. So I'm going to show you how to do it. They're easier than they look. Okay, so this is the shape that I'm going to prep. So you can see it's got some pretty deep curves in it. This space in here will be a little dicey because it's narrow in between there and there, but I'm going to show you how to do that, and also in here. So I'm just going to start and talk about what I'm doing as I do it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to iron it to the back of my fabric. Make sure it lays nice and flat. Okay, so it's fixed there pretty good. I'm only going to trim this side of the shape first. So I'm using my normal 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm not making a smaller seam allowance. Especially in this area. I find you need that seam allowance to grab onto. If you cut your seam allowance narrower, it's a lot trickier to prep it. So I'm just going to trim all the way around it. Now this piece in here, I'm just going to cut straight down the middle. And then I'm going to start cutting over here. Because I do want that 1/4 inch all the way around, and if I trim anything out, I won't have any seam allowance. And the same in here, I'm just cutting straight down the middle. And then starting up here again. Okay, so that will get us started. So clipping is very important. You don't want to over clip. So all I want to do in this curvy part here, I'm just going to put 2 clips in there. Now I want to stay about an eighth of an inch away from the freezer paper. You don't want to clip all the way to the freezer paper because you'll end up with a raw edge peeking out from under. So I'm clipping here, here, and here, and then here and here, and that's all the clipping I'm doing in that one spot in there. So I'm going to put some starch in my jar and just let it go to a liquid. Got my stiletto, my iron, and my paintbrush. So I'm just going to paint on some starch just up to that first curve. You don't want to start painting too far ahead of yourself because it will dry. One thing I am going to do is I'm going to cut that right there. Okay, so I'm just going to fold that over. Pick up my stiletto and just ease that seam allowance over the freezer paper. I turn my piece as I go so that I'm always sort of working from right to left. Now when I come to these pieces, these small pieces, I put my stiletto down. When I want to get to that inside curve, I take the paper and the fabric and I bend it towards myself so that all I can see is that tiny seam allowance. then I use my iron and I just push that seam allowance onto the freezer paper. So that's our first curve. Now I'm just going to work up to this, the top of this piece, and this is the easy part. The fern parts are easy to do. It's just a matter of working around this top part. Now I'm going to clip in here and I'm going to just starch into that curve. So when I get to this point, it's the point at where my first clip is. You can see that clip right there. So I fold this over towards myself and I just tuck that seam allowance over, and then I let the iron do the work to bring those other seam allowances over. Okay, that's 2 done. Now we're just going to clip in here. And that's just all the clips I need right there. Take my starch and just do that curve. And then you can even do up the top part because you're just going to keep right on going once you get past the curve. So just pull that seam allowance towards yourself till you get to that very first clip. Then you pull this towards yourself so you can really get into that curve, and then the iron will push those other seam allowances over. Now this is the piece that we just cut straight down the middle, so I'm going to do a couple of clips at the base of this curve, and then just 1 or 2 right there. Okay, so I'm at the first clip. Pull it towards myself. Really get that iron in there to that inner curve, and then just continue on your merry way. Now you can see that sometimes the iron will touch some of the other pieces and flatten it out. So all you have to do is just restarch it and just touch the iron to it again. And there's another one right over here. Okay. So this is another one that we just cut straight down the middle. So I'm just going to cut on either side into that curve, and then once just up here. let's starch this up. And we'll just do this last curve, and then we're at the halfway point. All right, so now we're halfway done. So now I'm going to trim down the other side. At this point, the freezer paper usually starts to come a little undone because you're handling it so much. So I mean, you just touch it up with your iron and you're good to go. And there we go. So the last thing I do is I flip it over and I just give it a final pressing and take a look at it and just make sure that all the seam allowances are tucked under and I can't see any raw edges. And there we go. Okay, so here we go. We have our fern shape all prepped and ready to go. So I always leave the freezer paper template in until I'm ready to place it onto my quilt. It just keeps it from flopping all over the place, and it just is safer, I think, with the freezer paper on it. So it is going to go right here. So I'm going to take out the freezer paper. I just peel off one side at the beginning, and then I just pull it. And you would think that it would just be a shred of something, but it's not. It's I just lay it out on my pressing board. You can either just sort of finger press the seam allowances back in and you're ready to go. Sometimes I take my iron and maybe just flatten it out a little bit. And that's all I do. And now I'm going to glue it in place. Put some dots of glue on it. I'm going to put it right at the outside of the leaves. Just one dot. And then just a dot there at the top and the bottom. Now it goes underneath this purple flower. I've stitched part of the purple flower, but I have left an opening for this fern. So I just take my stiletto and I lift that up. And it goes underneath there. And then I can just place it where it's supposed to be. Just a curve a little bit this way. And there we go. Just glue this piece down, and now I'm ready to stitch.